Picture a glowing fiber optic web rapidly expanding across the globe, quietly feeding millions of home connections into one massive centralized intelligence. That is the scale of GRAS. It is a DePIN, a decentralized physical infrastructure network, operating 8.5 million active nodes across 190 countries, retrieving 3 petabytes of data every single day. AI companies are desperate for this data to train their models, but when they try to scrape the web using traditional data centers, corporate anti-bot filters immediately block their traffic. GRAS bypasses these roadblocks by routing traffic through everyday residential internet connections. Because these are home IP addresses, they evade the geo-restrictions and bot detectors that stop commercial scrapers. This creates a fundamental choice for the user. You can view this as a community-owned protocol compensating you for unused bandwidth, or as a centralized corporation using your home connection to offload its own risks. GRAS has achieved undeniable, massive scale, but the narrative of a decentralized data layer often obscures the specific terms users are actually signing up for. Participation is passive. Users install a browser extension or plug in a dedicated hardware device called the Grasshopper to share their unused internet bandwidth for rewards. That bandwidth powers live context retrieval, or LCR. LCR is the network's enterprise product. When an AI model receives a prompt, it uses GRAS to pull real-time web data to supplement its answer before it responds. Look at the data flow. User nodes retrieve web data, flowing directly to the foundation, then to AI labs. The financial flow is opposite. Enterprise clients pay the foundation in fiat. The foundation distributes tokens to nodes, but fiat revenue remains entirely hidden. Users provide the physical infrastructure and the residential IP addresses, but they surrender data sovereignty. You have no control over what is scraped through your connection, or who ultimately buys that information. The business model is functional, but the relationship is asymmetrical. Contributors are paid in company tokens for providing the resources that build the foundation's private equity. On the left, marketing promises like decentralized validators and DAO governance. On the right, the operational reality of a single validator and 100% closed-source infrastructure. Wind Labs, the project's founding team, has 0 public GitHub repositories. This makes it impossible for the community to independently verify the node software, the router software, or how the data is handled. GRAS claims to use zero-knowledge proofs to checkpoint data on the Solana blockchain, which would theoretically prove the data's origin. However, without auditable code, these cryptographic claims cannot be verified by anyone outside the company. The project's documentation states that nearly 23% of the token supply is managed by a DAO. In practice, no governance forums or voting systems exist. All strategic decisions remain with Wind Labs and the Foundation. The network does produce real assets, such as the 14-terabyte valid dataset. But while the output is verifiable, the internal mechanisms that produce it are entirely controlled by a single entity. For a protocol explicitly marketed as a trustless Web3 network, the current architecture requires users to place absolute trust in the core team. Imagine a figure wearing a recognizable domestic disguise, like a postman's jacket, slipping through a high-tech corporate security grid undetected. This is what happens when your personal IP address acts as an exit node. Your home connection is used as the final point of contact to scrape the web on behalf of unknown third parties. The legal environment for web scraping is tightening. Regulators are increasingly using GDPR in Europe and the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act in the US to target unauthorized data collection. When a website records an unauthorized scraping event, the digital trail ends at the residential IP that made the request. Since your IP is recorded in the target's logs, any legal enforcement or service bans will target your home connection first, not the foundation. The GRAS token has a fixed supply of 1 billion. Its utility is tied to network staking and its use as a settlement layer for enterprise LCR payments. The supply curve reveals heavy insider ownership. 47% of all tokens go to the team and venture capitalists. This massive spike in February 2026 represents a 55 million token unlock. Monthly linear unlocks continue through 2029, creating years of potential sell pressure. To maintain value against this inflation, a token needs a direct demand loop. But because the enterprise revenue is opaque, and there is no on-chain burn or buyback mechanism, the token's economic link to the business remains unproven. The project did achieve a massive retail reach. Airdrop 1 distributed 10% of the supply to 2.8 million individual wallets, creating one of the largest holder bases on Solana. However, even a wide airdrop does not change the math. The 30% total community allocation is not enough to counterbalance the weight of the 47% held by insiders. These tokenomics appear structured to provide significant returns to early venture capitalists, while the broader retail market is left to absorb the resulting inflation. The Own Your Mind grading for Grass is split. It earns a freedom score of 37 out of 100, a grade F, and a return score of 55 out of 100, a grade C. Here is how that applies to different users. For the contributor, someone with no capital who is willing to accept the legal risks of being an exit node, running the software for airdrop rewards is a profitable use of bandwidth. The token speculator should exercise strong caution. The massive supply overhang from insider unlocks and the lack of revenue transparency make the token a high-risk long-term hold. And if you are the Web3 purist looking for actual decentralization and data ownership, you should stay away completely. The core of this network remains entirely centralized. To improve these scores, Wind Labs must open source the core node and router code. Independent verification is the only way to prove their technical claims. They must also deliver the promised sovereign data rollup with verifiable ZK proofs and begin publishing regular reports on enterprise revenue. You are standing before two doors, one sleek and brightly lit with corporate logos, the other dark, raw, and unbranded. Grass is a centralized data business using a token incentive layer to fuel its growth. Now that the underlying mechanisms are visible, you can decide exactly how much of your bandwidth you are willing to trade.